I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.
And welcome everybody to the Libertarian Podcast Review. This is Tyler Yonke, your host. Episode 14, I believe we are at this point. Look, I'm a little disappointed in myself, partly because I had on Jose Galason recently, and I had some audio issues when I went to put the show up. A little bit, it was odd. It was not having my audio. Luckily, the way I record with my soundboard, I'm able to put it up and try to match it. And then there was syncing issues. I apologize for that. And I think it was also the video version I gave to Jose was maybe only in one ear. This is, the comedy of errors, and you're trying to have a podcast that you critique people's production and all these other things. But since then, I just said, fuck it. I'm not doing any more podcasts. I'm out. I'm embarrassed. No, I'm kidding. I'm back. But it has been having a little break. I have another podcast I do on the cycling, and I haven't even been doing that one. So I finally got a chance today to go over a bunch of different podcasts, and I did one on there, and I'm doing one here, and I'm going to give you some sound advice on a new podcast. It's relatively new in the world of podcasts. Break the Cycle with Josh Smith. We're going to talk about this thing coming up and give you a little understanding, play some clips. And then I heard Josh recently on, what was he on? Lions of Liberty. Mark Claire was also on his show. They got into some things there. And I thought maybe I'll try to get in touch with Josh and not just talk to him about, because he's got a pretty famous guy. Who is he? We'll talk about him here in a second here. But he is somewhat famous in the libertarian world of some of his personal issues as far as going through it with his family and the family courts. Me, I'm a family law attorney. Been doing that for quite a few years. That's all I do. Well, I do some other things too, a little bit of property, but mostly family law. And I thought it was very fascinating. First of all, what he said was not incorrect. There was a few things that I had little minor quibbles with here and there, but that's just someone who's way too involved in the system all the time. Me. So I thought it'd be interesting maybe to get to hold of Josh and actually have a conversation with him about family law courts and what we can maybe do to fix that. Now, the reality is there's nothing you can do. Just letting you know. But maybe we'll talk through some of those gripes and give some suggestions from him. He can give me those about his experiences, and maybe I could offer a little bit of some friendly conversation about that world, because it is a big deal. And, one of the people that I know that has Larry Sharp ran for governor of New York and then was going to be on the VP ticket last year of the Libertarian Party. He's had some great ideas for streamlining and changing the family courts there in New York. So look, each state has a little bit of differences. I heard Josh saying a few things that I was like, what? It's not, but then he would reference that it was from Oregon. So maybe that is the case. Who is Josh Smith? Why should we care about him? And what is Break the Cycle? Well, Josh Smith, formerly Josh at Large. I think there was a position he had with the Libertarian Party. He had been involved with the actual Libertarian Party, and he was huge into bringing people into the party. They had a whole system where people probably know about this, where you can have an affiliate program. You sign people up, he gets kickbacks for that. And I think he had been like the number one person recruiting. So as far as we're going to talk about a little later, is he a person that can outreach to normies? He's highly qualified, and he's done this before, bringing people into the Libertarian Party. That's where Josh was kind of got his part. I had seen him on the Dave Smith show, part of the problem. Then I think he was part of the Mises Caucus then, and I joined up. As soon as I heard about the Mises Caucus, I was on board, and I've been probably for him. But I don't think I use his affiliate link. I may have either him or Tom Woods, one of those two. So pretty much maybe it was Josh. So anyway, Josh then no longer part of that. And he decides to, so he's got a decent following in the libertarian movement in general. So, which was always helpful for him. He starts a show. He's got, 30 some episodes, I think, on here now. 39 just had with Angela McCardle. And so 40 episodes in, 3,000 plus, almost 3,100 subscribers on his YouTube. I'm very jealous. But he started off with a great, see, like for me, I've got a job. I've got other things going. I got 4 kids. I got a little bit of a life. Although my wife's in Hawaii right now. No, she's not in Hawaii. She's in Mexico with my daughter. My other daughter's with someone else. My son's right now at his last baseball game. Yeah, right. I'm kind of dad of mine that I'm not there. I'm not. Okay, that's part of the problem. However, I'm got a little bit of a leash this week because of that, so I'm able to do this. But work's been really busy. Josh has like 20 kids, so I get that. But he's really started off, at least from his perspective of being able to do a show, a little bit hard. You know, he didn't have to work as hard immediately. He just kept sending out tweets, and everyone was. That's what I did. I saw him tweeting, and I'm like, sure, I'll check out your show. Plus, I have a show that critiques podcasts, so why not? Why not try to do that? Okay, so whose show is he? Anonymous? Definitely not. He's Joshua Smith, Joshua at large. He's got part of the libertarian movement, like we said. He's talked a lot about his personal life and his family. Before his podcasts, he'd been on Dave Smith's show, Tom Woods, I think. Once again, he was part of the Mises Caucus. He's a very typical middle American dude, and this ingratiates him to me even more. This is actually what I like. As someone who's gone through, got a lot of education here and there. I love though when we get people, and I say this a few times, and I don't mean it at all as slight. It's to knock down the world of those that you think are think they're so important with their degrees. I talked to Dave Smith, or I don't, but I mean, you listen to him, um, and he is super smart and he knows what he's talking about, and he can run circles around you in all kinds of aspects of liberty and economics. And he's just Dave Smith with probably a BS degree if he finished, right? And then you've got all these other people that have, doctorates and all kinds of other things, and they're just a bunch of idiots. So I like the middleman, the middle American, just average Joe, but that knows what he wants and he knows how to talk about it. And that's Josh Smith. Definitely not a dummy at all. And that goes into his interview styles. It goes into his conversations. And I really enjoy the show. I'm already throwing it out there that I do enjoy the show because of that. Does he have guests? What type of range? Are they well known? Well, if you were paying attention, I just said he's all kinds of guests on. Josh started to show the foot up of the competition. Fact that he already had everybody in the Libertarian Party. He was a little bit of a lightning rod due to some issues, which he actually talks about with his show with Mark Claret, Lions of Liberty. You either loved or hated him, and this all fed into him being able to have great guests on, and we'll go through a list of some of those guests here. How long are his podcasts? They're usually about an hour in length or some, get Scott Horton, who's had on twice. You can't help but have like at least an hour and a half as a short podcast episode with him. Few have been just under an hour, but for the most part, those could have been due to technical issues. If you watch his first few episodes, he's talking one day, he's just talking on, and the podcast, it's not even his mic's off. His show is a live stream. Okay. So if you're watching it live, these things happen. Sometimes it's always hard to tell if YouTube is getting the broadcast that part, and so forgive him a little bit for there. I think he can go in and edit and fix those things. That's somewhat of a pain, and for someone like myself who doesn't want to do those, you just want to stream them out. I get it. Frequency, well, at least once or twice a week. Sometimes episode 1 was March 4, and then he has a few days in between, so it's every 3 to 4 days. Sometimes it's back to back, and then just depends. Started a show on March 4, like I said, and he's currently on episode 39, which was one day ago, so 10th or so of June. Solid work. Break the Cycle is the name of the podcast. It's kind of got some libertarian activism in him. He had that before. And what kind of libertarian is he? I think Josh is probably your ANCAP, anarcho-capitalist, but he definitely, like I said, he's been in this game. He doesn't ruffle feathers of some people that are. I'm going to see if I can get this up here and play a clip, because I had an issue this week. I was listening to Clint's show, and with he interviewed 2 females, and this isn't a critique of the females he had, other than I happened to just listen to them back to back. So it was an interesting contrast for listening to nope, not getting that right now. Okay, well, maybe we'll come back to it and being able to link up with these. I was gonna play some clips. Anyway, it was Isabel Riley was on there, and then the other one was the Redheaded Libertarian. And I just thought it was really interesting to hear. One, I didn't have any clips of Isabella because she's distracting because of her looks. But I thought we'd do the Redheaded Libertarian because she had some comments there that I thought were just in direct contrast to each other. And I thought that goes into when you talk about someone like Josh Smith. I don't get the antagonistic if you're minarchist, libertarian, conservative, ANCAP. He's just talking to you on a show, things you have in common. And for some reason, people, they do still get upset about, when people are just different than them. So who knows? Maybe before the show's over, we'll play some of those clips. Let's get into categories. Intro. Well, first of all, Josh has impeccable production already from the start. So he was different from many people in that respect because he came in, he's got artwork. And if you look at his YouTube page, which will go up right now, he used Top Lobster as one of his cohorts there. You can check the colors, they blend from one to another. It's like just goes in through the line from one show into the next. He's got kind of this 80, we'll play as his intro. He's got kind of this 80s look to it. And kind of the video that's kind of grainy there. Top Lobster hand draws these thumbnails. So, and then he's got good sound when he turns it on. Good quality stuff. He's got a nice studio. It's in his basement. And so Josh Smith went to running when he took off. So he's got an intro music. He's got some band that plays those. He does a live stream. So it happens live. It's hassles and all that with editing could be good for not having to fix those later on. But when you see it live, it could be a problem because once again, sometimes there's issues when you actually just don't have, you don't have your mic on. What about his ability to insert ad? He does place those kind of in the top, gets them out of the way. And then he brings, so he has an interesting way of, he just, his guest is on there, but he's live. He comes in, he does a little bit of intro, pops his guest in, has a conversation, sends the guest on their way, and then closes out the show. And he does have some timeliness of the topics. Well, since it's on weekly and it's live, it's, you're talking about things that are happening. So that is it. He does have a Patreon group and another subscription group that you can do. He's got a different outro song than his intro. His tangibility, his ability to interview the host. Look, I think he does a great job of this, partly because he's had so much time being in this movement. He just knows these people. He's had speaking gigs, he's had to do with his job as far as working for the Libertarian Party. So he has a bit of an aspect of being able to just BS and talk, and he gets he's got an ease of speaking. Definitely not using a script. It just goes off of it, and it's a live show. And that's not always an easy thing. People started up with the podcasts and they, like this, I give them even more credit of just doing a live show because it's, you can do it like Michael Malice, where you're just kind of at your computer screen, you're typing away and you're laughing and people, for some reason, just tune in and there's like no production. He's just like, hey, come on in. You're just being able to like fishbowl this guy at his house. That's kind of what it is. Whereas Josh Smith is putting on a show and he's got production from start to finish and it shows. Can you share it with normies? Definitely a show to share with normies. Once again, I thought his origins, being with the Libertarian Party has really fed into this. And so I think he can definitely do that. Does he do much conspiracies? I haven't really seen him going about that stuff. He'll just talk to people that have some, differing points of view and go into that. So I think it's just kind of what it is and you should be checking it out. Okay. How about the intro? Now, I'm going to have a little issue. Let's go in first with a clip here from Clint of Liberty Lockdown talking to the Redheaded Libertarian. And I just thought this was an interesting thing. It's not really anything to do with Josh other than just differing people, how they view things in life and the government. And I don't always know that this is how I would do it. So let's listen here. The Redheaded Libertarian on with Clint.
Public. Like, for instance, if you think about how dirty the courts are now, imagine if they were private. If you think about how dirty the police and defense are now, imagine if they were private, So at least there's a check and a balance there. If it's enforced properly, which is where the issue is, it doesn't need to be abolished, it needs to be enforced properly. That's what I believe. Just
let's make sure we got the beginning of
that. Public. Like, for instance, if you think about how dirty the courts are now. So
we don't have to really go much. She's talking there about the government. She's a minarchist for this reason. Now, she's kind of controversial online. And she talks about a minarchist. This is the reason, right? Once again, let's play this. This is why she's a minarchist.
Imagine if they were private.
Courts.
If you think about how dirty the police and defense are now, imagine if they were private, you know. So at least there's a check and a balance there. If it's enforced properly, which is where the issue is, it doesn't need to be abolished, it needs to be enforced properly. That's what I believe.
So and then later on she comes out with this one.
Government, I mean, if you think about the problem, like I was thinking about, like, the problem is, like, you know, I'm a homeowner, for instance. It's government property tax. It's you know, that's the stuff that keeps me down. It's the government interference that makes it harder for me to survive. The government.
So I guess by her understanding there, the police and the courts would be worse if they were private because there's nothing to stop in their way. They would just be degrading force. Nothing is more intrusive and keeps me down than than the government. And you wonder why people, she's like, I get the most shit from ANCAPs because, you know, yeah, well, yeah, no shit. Yeah, you're literally saying the free market doesn't work in these other situations. Matter of fact, if the free market were to work, be allowed in police and courts, they would be even worse. And I'm like, they are worse because of that. And then somehow we want to take your word for it on anything else. Give me a break. Which was in the dichotomy there was this Isabella O'Reilly. Once again, nice to look at. Her take on things was a little bit more the point of, I'm not quite sure. I'm still listening. And once again, it was a breath of fresh air where she wasn't, so she's very confident in things she says, and she's quite humorous and psychotic for someone. She says it doesn't laugh. So check that out on Clint's podcast. But listen to her when she's talking about these ANCAP things and how she's more interested in to talk them out rather than someone like the Redheaded Libertarian who was dismissive of the courts and the cops, that they would be worse off. Come on, people. This is not how life works. Okay, let's get into some of the show here with Clint. And maybe we get right to maybe the last one here, his intro. I got some issues with the audio issues. So I think we'll just jump in with, let's talk about, he had Jacob Hornberger on the second show. And what about Pete Quinones, our buddy here?
A lot of people out of an apolitical life and made them political. And then if you're apolitical and you're pulled into politics, and then you're like, who you're learning politics from and who you're relying on is Trump. I mean, is there any wonder why, you know, people ran to Q and stuff like that?
I want to show a different spot.
It was really, really cool, man. But do you know, I'm pretty sure I caught COVID at that convention.
Did you?
Yeah. You know, I was
flying. I've been trying for a year to catch COVID and I can't even get it. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it probably has something to do with the mask, Pete. I'm sure you're not wearing the mask, but no, it was funny. It was funny. I was flying in and out of SFO every single weekend at that time. You remember I was running for chair, so I was traveling all over the country, and I lived right outside of San Francisco. And so I was flying in and out of San Francisco every weekend during the height of the coronavirus pandemic start, you know, and there's 5,000 people a day traveling between San Francisco and China in and out of that airport. And in fact, I would take the BART train, which, you know, kind of like their metro train or whatever, right to the airport. And you have to walk through the international terminal to get to the domestic terminals. And I showed up to Georgia. We had a really good time. It was actually a good time. You know, we got to watch that crazy debate, like in like the city council chambers or whatever the hell it was. And then I ended up on Kokesh's bus for a while, but my flight left really early in the morning at like 4:00 in the morning or something. So I just stayed up and then went to the airport. And by the time I hit the airport, I got that itchy feeling in your throat, you know, and you're starting to get sick and you're like, oh shit, I'm getting sick. And by the time I got home, I had a fever.
You sure that wasn't anything you were partaking on Kokesh's bus?
You never know with Kokesh's bus, man. You really don't know. I could have caught anything. I'm surprised I didn't catch hepatitis there.
Good banter back and forth with them. Actually, I still wanted to do the one other spot I wanted to go through. A lot of here, 909. Let's see if we can find this here.
And now you guys kind of
okay, continue on.
Stupid thing that people used to say, where it was like, well, you know, the right's evil. Any intention from the right is evil, but the left, they mean well. They're just misguided. And it seems, and that is the most retarded thing I've ever heard. in the first place, because the left is the most conniving Machiavellian group out there.
Sure.
The right are just retards. It can't get anything done. And even when you have a Republican president, a Republican Congress, and a Republican Supreme Court, they can't get anything done. To support people who are doing horrible shit because they're on the left, I mean, they would reverse that and make that a right-wing movement. They would have ran away from it in a second. And so that is why I call them bitch-ass libertarians. And it's not the only reason. I mean, I have plenty of reasons for calling them bitch-ass libertarians, but this one's pretty obvious because it includes death, multiple deaths.
Sure.
Once again, Pete, we love you. You're one of the best. Check out my episode with Pete. He came on. I was so happy that he was joining us on the show. Okay, we're gonna play a clip here with the great, the one and only Dave Smith. See if we could find his video here. Hang on.
About this all the time, you know, we're gonna have a hard time trying to turn Republicans and Democrats into libertarians. We're just going to, but they're not even half the population of this country.
Yeah.
You know, the 61% of the population didn't vote for a presidential candidate in 2016. I think it was a little bit less than that in 2020, but it was a very, very tribalistic, like chest beating team sport election. Both of them really, but it was even worse in 2020 because we had to get rid of the evil orange man and we had to install the Alzheimer's guy. And, but 61% of the population, that's, you know, if we took that at face value, there shouldn't be a fucking president, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and also, and you got to realize that it's a false dichotomy that you have to get a majority of the population. Like that is not what we shouldn't even be thinking about that. And especially just because it's not practical right now for libertarians to try to get a majority of the country. But you have to think about the fact that really the vast majority of human beings are followers.
sure.
That's just the reality. And that's not a knock on those people. It's just that's the nature of leaders. Leaders are rare and followers are plentiful. That's part of the human condition, whether you like it or not. And there are different areas where different people are leaders and other people are followers. You know, like there's, you know, if you know, 5 of us are, you know, in a car that breaks down and one of us is a mechanic, that guy becomes the leader pretty quickly and the rest of us become the followers, you know,
Sure,
like that's
sure.
okay, you know this, so you're going to lead here, right? And so, but if we were to get 10% of the population who are really, you know, like impressive, intelligent, compelling people who believed in the shit we believe in, that will change the world in a way that none of us can even imagine.
Sure.
So it's not a matter of getting 51%. And so to your point, the fact that there's this huge pool of people open, we don't need to get all of them, you know, we can pick off at the margins. But if the remnant gets big enough, if the remnant swells to the point that enough people start actually waking up, this can change things in profound ways.
Well said, Dave Smith. And he could be your libertarian presidential hopeful. Let's go to Drew Hancock. Drew Hancock. Who is Drew Hancock? Well, he does videos. I would suggest you watch this one. He's not quite 21. He's kind of, I follow him on Twitter. He's a funny guy. He's probably what Michael Malice would be if he was born in America and tall. So let's check that out. I'm going to go for the intro here on this one. If we can load it up.
Wow. I'm very, very, very sorry. I had a few technical difficulties. I'm sure you guys are used to it by now. No, in fact, I started the.
That's what Josh says about a lot of those there. He has some technical difficulties.
We have Drew Hancock on the show. You guys know Drew Hancock? Drew is the owner of the Drew Hancock channel on YouTube that seemingly came out of absolutely nowhere and started making amazing quality videos. He's been really, really cool. I was very astonished to find out that he's only 20 years old. Probably the least dumb 20-year-old I've ever met in my life. Here is Drew Hancock. How the hell are you, sir?
I'm pretty good, Josh. I think that least 20-year-old, that's a compliment. It's not really that much of a compliment, but you know what? I'll take it. I think having a conversation between a 20-year-old like myself, you know, who's very tech savvy, and like a boomer like yourself, I think it'll be an interesting dynamic.
Right, exactly. I probably could have asked you how to run live streams, and you would have been like, dude, what are you doing? No, you don't do. Listen, this is how you gotta do it. It's funny. Nick Ashley, who's in the chat right now. Before every show I do with a guest, I have to call him and be like, hey man, can you hop on Zoom with me real quick so we can make sure that all the sound's going, everything sounds all right, and my video looks good. He's like, yeah, I'll hop on, and he's always ready to go. But man, he's helped me out so much, and he's part of the Neon Sign Club. So when we get the new Break the Cycle neon sign behind me, he's going to be a big part of that. But man, why don't you tell my listeners and my guests how you came to Liberty at such a young age, man? You're 20 years old and you're already running around saying fuck the state. I love it.
Yeah, so I got kind of a head start. So my dad is a libertarian, so I'm kind of second gen libertarian. But yeah, so my dad was a big Ron Paul supporter, so I kind of gleaned stuff off of him. I remember I was a kid and I asked him, like, are you a Democrat or a Republican? And he told me a libertarian. So yeah, I've gotten kind of that upraising, and I turned 13 years old, and I was like, you know, I'm getting pretty old now, so I should learn something about politics. Yeah, you know, a couple years ago. And I was like, you know, I'm pretty old now. I should learn something about politics. And I was like, hey, my dad loved that Ron Paul guy. Why don't I learn about Ron Paul? So I looked up on YouTube and I started watching his speeches and stuff that he did at the debates and stuff like that. And I just picked it up and I thought, yeah, this makes sense to me. And, you know, as time went on, I delved more deep into it than just Ron Paul. Like I've probably seen every clip of Ron Paul on YouTube from around that time period. And yeah, I got into reading. My dad loaned me one of his books, and then I started.
Well, that's where we stopped. When we started talking about reading with Drew Hancock. By the way, when you watch his videos, he has such obscure clips he pulls out, and I can see why. When you're watching videos at 13 years old of Ron Paul, God bless you. All right, see what we got here.
Content like pretty concise. Like if you want like an in-depth breakdown of like how private law and private security could work, like there are people like Bob Murphy who really go into that. But you know, I'm like pretty concise and just short with it. But yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with, I mean, every point you made in that video is super, super solid. It is really hilarious to me to see the conservative movement supporting the police when you know damn well that everything you stand for, you know, if you purport to be a big fan of individual liberty and, you know, economic freedom and firearms and stuff like this, that's all the stuff that is, you know, going to be taken from you by force by the police, who in your video you say, you know, swear to uphold the Constitution, but constantly enforce laws that break them every single day. And it's very true. And then yeah, I think the progressives just don't really know what they want.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
It's funny because both sides of the aisle, they actually agree with the ends on a lot of things with libertarians and even anarchists especially. But it's so different about how they want to get there. You know what I mean? One side wants to use, they both want to use.
I'm going to pause it there because I've said that many times and talked about how Trump or Bernie Sanders could have the exact same problem that they see, but the solution is completely different. And then you go to a libertarian where, you know, the binary solutions are only coming out of the one side or the other. And then you have the libertarian side. So good job, Josh, on that. Let's go to Clint. Yes, our favorite Clint Liberty Lockdown was on here early on because he was making the rounds, blowing it up. Drew Hancock. Then Clint comes in here, and let's see if we can find a spot here somewhere around the 3-minute range.
Yeah, going viral with some Alex Jones.
This is crazy. So I posted in jest. I mean, it was pretty much a joke. You know, if you've ever watched Alex Jones, you know he's pretty famous for saying that the adrenochrome stuff and how, you know, these rich politicians and elite drink this the blood of the youth to stay youthful, and he kind of goes into this how they're sacrificed and all this shit. And I posted this Newsweek article that's like, hey, there's some science behind, you know, the blood of the young making older people stay younger for longer. And I was like every day more and more Alex Jones was right, you know. And some big blue check like liberal, Democrat, progressive shared it, and I am getting attacked like crazy. Like I totally posted this thing in jest. It was funny, you know. Like I like Alex Jones sometimes, and he's right about a lot of shit, but he's also like a meme, and it's funny, you know. I mean, seriously, he's amazing sometimes when just to laugh at. And these people are going nuts. I mean, they're losing it. They're like, "You're this and that." I've been called a Klan member, a Nazi. What's wrong with these people, Clint?
Well, in fairness, I think Alex is more right than he is wrong. But he does have a tendency to be a bit hyperbolic with his claims. Like, I think he was right, actually. That, I mean, I've been reading about this for years, so this is not a new concept that they were going to take the blood of the young to try and reinvigorate the old. Alex just takes it to that next level where it's satanic ritual and there's, interdimensional child molesters and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, there are child molesters, but they're probably not interdimensional. And they are taking the blood of the youth to stay young, but they're probably not murdering them during it. So,
hopefully,
he's close.
Hopefully.
Close.
I mean, we did find out about this huge cabal of pedophiles. I mean,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So-
No, they definitely kill some kids and they definitely do some real dark stuff. So I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm just saying Alex takes it to that, like, when it's already at a 9, he's like, we're going to 11.
I mean, he was right about the frogs being gay, dude.
You're telling me I've been dating him for a couple of years now.
All right.
But there's a lot of people in this country, especially veterans, especially constitutionalists. There's a lot of people in this country that are going to say, fuck you, come back with a warrant. You know what I mean? And
that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's the moderate position.
Yeah, that's the moderate position. Absolutely. And it's worrisome, for a guy like me with 8 kids. It's worrisome. I don't want them to show up at my doorstep and do this shit, and then I have to, I would rather everyone get together and say no fucking together, because that's what it's gonna take to push back on this shit. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like everyone's always like, well, are you calling for violence? I'm like, no, I'm calling for a meaningful statement that you are willing to commit violence to protect your liberty.
Right.
I am calling for unity in purpose and a conviction that you will not take any more of our rights, period. And if that means that there's violence, it is defensive in nature, because we are stating definitively, no further, no more. So if they want to be the aggressor, then we have to act in self-defense. So I'm not calling for violence. I am calling for you to defend yourself and your fellow man in this country. And it's fucking now.
Sure.
Like,
quick note on that. That was Gavin McGinnis had been on a different. Well, I remember him on with Glenn Beck, actually talking about the Proud Boys. That was their deal. Hey, we're tired of getting pushed around, so we're going to, and instead of nothing against Clint, but we're talking about these things, but it's kind of theory in a sense, or what we were doing. Proud Boys were actually out there doing that, so they were willing to take that on and to get in trouble. And now look, they're called all kinds of names for it. Okay. Ace Archist, episode 17. I found this guy very fascinating because he wants to be anonymous. And so I ended up listening to the whole dang podcast with him. And he doesn't really want to say who, or doesn't want to show who he is. Mild-mannered guy, at least when you talk to him. But man, he is a strong force on Twitter. He gets into it with everybody. So he had we talked to Clint, who we just saw there, about and did a breakdown of his interview or his debate with Kevin Connolly about the neocon debate, and Ace was the one that kind of instigated that. Let's hear about that.
Out is kind of gross to me, but it's probably true.
They're just in there just rubbing their hands together. What's going on in the Middle East today, buddy? What can we do today?
That's right. How many children can we kill this time?
Exactly. So I listened to your debate with Kevin Castley.
Oh yeah, yes. My debate.
Your debate was wonderful.
Yeah.
Man. It was actually my first introduction to who would later become the Duck on my first episode of Break the Cycle, and man, it was great. And
shout out to El Popo.
Yep.
He was fantastic.
He's the
great.
Man. He is the man. I got to get him back on the show eventually. One of these days when I do, maybe I should just do a whole damn show with him. Really, I don't know why.
No, you should.
I should.
You should.
Undoubtedly. If you guys missed that first episode with El Popo back when I had about 5 followers, you should definitely check it out. He is hilarious. But yeah, man. So today was the end of the Derek Chauvin trial. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a pretty big thing. We've been going through.
All right, we're going to go to the next clip here with are we going to do some more with Asarchist? I think we are. So let's see if we can find this one. Okay, 57.
So obviously, I think with more people with social media, these types of things can spread faster. So people wearing masks, the idea that the narrative can change quickly because of social media, and we definitely see that. But there's also a lot of people who are just not going along with the masks and who are waking up to the charade, and I think that's great.
Sure, yeah, and I think over the last year, there's been a lot of conservatives that have gotten red pilled on police,
Yes,
and the
yes.
wars and elections.
That's right.
It's kind of like a cool thing to watch. I mean, they still have some bad habits, and those are things
Right.
we can work on down the road. But the fact that conservatives are, I mean, it's not a huge majority of them or anything, but it's
No.
a part of them are getting red pilled on.
Each person that becomes an anarchist is a win, no matter what.
Oh, totally,
Right.
totally.
So it's like, yeah, I think that's how you have to view it always. So it's like, okay, this person, or at least even if they're on their way to anarchism, even if they're not there yet, that's still a win. If you can pull a conservative or a liberal out of their shell and like at least get them to follow you, at least to some degree, that's huge. That's absolutely huge.
Yeah. Well, I'm still going to always push for the national divorce. I think.
Oh yes, no, I agree with that. Absolutely.
I talked about it.
Is
Oh yeah. Well, I
great.
talked about it on my Twitter the other day or yesterday. I said I don't think that there's any way to peacefully coexist with people who want to use the state to enforce medical experiments on me. And I believe that. I don't know that going forward there's a way to peacefully coexist with people like that. Now, if they, drop that and say, "Oh, I was wrong. That was stupid." Okay, maybe, but how many people do you think are going to drop that? I mean, when we got people wearing 6 masks and
Good point there. So Josh, just wanted to say, I think Malice talks about that. Why am I going to negotiate my freedoms with you? That's just not going to happen. Okay. We're getting into Elizabeth Riley. She was on the show, and hear that.
PragerU stan, from what I understand. Pretty staunch capitalist and paleo libertarian. Her name is Isabella Riley. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Oh, I can't complain. I'm glad we were able to make this happen.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, it got a little dicey there, but we figured it out. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to liberty? And obviously you're a conservative and you work inside the Republican Party. And probably our stories are a little bit different, but everyone's got a story about their journey to liberty. So what was it that brought you here specifically?
So I don't call myself a conservative anymore. It's pretty disgusting. But so I grew up. So my father has always been a libertarian. And I always say I pretty much was raised. He always talked about Ron Paul and Rand, Ayn Rand. So my father was Ron Paul. My mother was pretty much Ayn Rand. I mean, he literally has an Ayn Rand face tattoo on his leg, like her portrait, like this big. And I didn't even realize it was her until a couple years ago. And I was just sitting on our back porch and I was like, wait, after binge watching Ayn Rand videos, I was like, is that Ayn Rand? And he was like, I can't believe you never knew. And she has a little money symbol tattooed on her face. It's amazing. So I've always pretty much been a libertarian, but I did like Donald Trump for the exact opposite reason that most conservatives that do. So most conservatives will say, I like his policies, but his rhetoric, his tweets, I don't like that. I am the opposite. I love his rhetoric. I love his harsh tweets. The worst tweets are my favorite tweets. His policies, I'm more of a libertarian, so he was big government. You can't deny that. But what I loved about him the most was that he was the manifestation of a middle finger to the political establishment, to the leftists, to the liberal elite. And I can't stand them. I've never been, a lot of conservatives were liberals before. I've never been a leftist, never once in my life. I've always been the same exact way. If anything, just now starting, social media politics, I realized, okay, you're not a conservative. Don't call yourself a conservative. And I identify myself as a paleo libertarian to, distinguish myself from the Lolbergs, the woke libertarians, the people that run the LP Twitter account. I can't stand them, and I do not relate with them whatsoever. I am a radical individualist, capitalist. I just want to be left alone. And I definitely hate everything about wokeism. I like being controversial and saying what I think. So I don't want to be told what to say and what I can and cannot say. So I definitely reject anything to do with the woke mob.
Sure. Well, first of all, it sounds like your dad's pretty based. I'm not going to lie.
Yes.
Okay, so once again, I think we just want to reiterate. I think that's the word, and play the video, contrasting her with the girl that was on. Just listen to what that, and then contrasting this to the one that was on with Clint.
Public, like for instance, if you think about how dirty the courts are now, imagine if they were private. You know, if you think about how dirty the police and defense are now, imagine if they were private, you know. So at least there's a check and a balance there. If it's enforced properly, which is where the issue is, it doesn't need to be abolished, it needs to be enforced properly. That's what I believe. Just
by the way, that reminds me of Trump when he came in. He was not doing things much different than the previous administration or even the one now. I mean, there's some differences, but he was going to be a different administrator of it. Anyway, just contrasting it with Isabella Riley and her strong stancer. Already multiple reasons, especially if you're watching the video, to love her, but especially on her comments. Let's go to the next one.
Porn. And they'll kind of be like a leftist and they'll say, oh, you're not against banning porn, you're pro porn. And I'm like, no, I just don't think the government should make it illegal for consenting parties that are legal adults to do whatever they want, as long as they're not hurting anyone, they're consenting, whatever. And that just kind of opened my eyes, like, okay, the conservatives want the government to mandate morality just as much as the left does, maybe not to the same extent, but they do. And something that really came to my mind was, you know, most people would be fine having a dictator as long as it's their preferred dictator. And I don't want that. I want people to live their lives the way they do. You know, I think all drugs should be legal. You can destroy your life if you want to, that's fine. But, you know, in today's reality, we have a welfare state. I don't want to pay for your medical costs. So it's kind of, you know, I wouldn't really support it then, but principally, if I could abolish the welfare state and you're responsible for your own medical costs, then sure, ruin your own life if you want to. I also don't think the government making something illegal, like, I don't know how many people are saying, I would try heroin, but it's illegal. You know, it just doesn't make sense. So if I'm going to be logically consistent, it's impossible for me to be logically consistent and be pro-capitalism, pro-free markets, pro-personal responsibility and individual liberty and people being able to do what they want with their own private property, not have it stolen from them, to be libertarian. And I'm this close to being like an ANCAP, but I don't think I can call myself that yet. But I listen primarily right now a lot to Michael Malice, Dave Smith, Tom Woods, and it's hard and I read a lot of Rothbard. It's really hard to I've never heard anything they said that I've disagreed with. So,
well, there you go. And by the way, they haven't said something like this.
Public, like for instance, if you think about how dirty the courts are now, imagine if they were private. You know, if you think about how dirty the police and defense are now, imagine if they were private. You know, so at least there's a check and a balance there. If it's enforced properly, which is where the issue is, it doesn't need to be abolished, it needs to be enforced properly. That's what I believe.
There you go. I don't know why I'm going to harp on this. Okay, Scott Horton. I think this is the wrong one because this is just clips of him, but I think we get the whole actual thing. He has episode 36, I believe. There it is with Scott Horton. Here's the entire thing, and let's see if we can go to the right spot. Okay, 4 minutes in. At some point, we're going to have to show. There's the. No offense, Clint. That's more my
And I
style.
just want to make sure they get the credit for the work that they're doing, because they're the ones really doing
Scott
it.
Horton.
Yeah, absolutely. I like I said, I know what you do, and I've introduced you more than one time, so I should have known better. But anyways,
No,
so
that's fine.
so we had this
This is
little
on
disagreement. It wasn't
ATF
really
guy.
disagreement. I was talking about David Chipman, who is likely to be the head of the ATF. He was definitely involved in Waco. There's a famous picture of an ATF agent standing around smoldering ashes. And there's definitely bodies in the picture that have burned up. And it's always kind of just been, as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of other people, it's just kind of been recognized that was him in that picture. And when I posted it and talked about it, you said that that's a lie and it's not true. So I want to get some more information from you about Waco. I actually did my first episode of Break the Cycle, the video version about Waco.
Great.
I knew quite a bit about Waco, but I went and watched a great, wonderful documentary called The Rules of Engagement.
Yes.
Amazing, one of the best documentaries, probably the best info about that whole entire ordeal that you can find. And I did my first episode. It was a great episode. I really, I didn't know what I was doing yet as far as podcasting went, but so I just have always just kind of thought that was him. But so I mean, where are you and as far as Waco goes, what I mean, I'm sure you have way more knowledge of it than I do, but do you know who that person in the picture is?
No, not exactly. But let me clear up a couple things. First of all, my first show was about Waco too.
Oh, nice.
That was in 1998. And I actually, back in the 1990s, I used to be a regular guest on the Alex Jones show when he was still on the FM, like 1996, 97 era, to talk about Waco. And I give him credit for really spearheading an effort, and he organized a lot of people with his radio show to come together and rebuild their church, their chapel for them on that property there in 1999 and 2000, which was really awesome. And I played a small part in that. I'm not taking credit for it, but I'm proud to have been associated with all that. But so as far as, and we can talk all about what was going on there, but I think you're just in your question.
Quick shout out here. I just thought I would apologize to all those that are watching this on YouTube, that we just went from Isabella Riley to me and Josh and Scott on camera. All right. Bye.
Even you assume that the person in that picture was ATF, but that is a huge stretch right there. And the fact of the matter is that if anyone from ATF was around with a rifle shooting at anybody or killing anybody on April the 19th, then that they were off the books. They were acting as, private unpaid hitmen getting revenge, which is possible that the FBI and the Army Delta Force let a couple of ATF agents come and get revenge for their fallen friends, but without badges, something like that. But there's no evidence that happened. None. That's pure speculation that any ATF agent would have been on the scene or involved in any way in what happened in the assault on April the 19th. That was the FBI. ATF did the raid on the first day on February the 28th. The FBI took over that night. And, at that, it's different now, but at that time, ATF was under Treasury. And so once the Justice Department led by the FBI came in, they're out. And so then that was it. And then the FBI ruled the place for 6 weeks. And then the FBI and the Army Delta Force went in there and exterminated those people, killed 86 of them.
Okay. Just wanted to make a comment about the integrity of Scott Horton. It would be real easy if you haven't seen the picture. Chipman's been nominated to the ATF, and people instantly were posting his picture. They look kind of like him, and he's going to go into a little bit more. I'm not going to keep going down. You watch the show yourself, but here's the integrity. It would be so easy to say this is the guy, because and then roast him in a sense. But Scott does go on further here to say that he's actually used the fact that this is not him to now in the I don't know, the Senate Intelligence Committee or one of the nominee, whatever it is, he's before saying, look, I'm being attacked untruthfully about making up lies about me, and that doesn't help your cause at all. And Scott Horton, Ryan Dawson, as an example, going after QAnon and different weird theories of 9/11. You can, and their point is, you take away from the crazy real stuff that happens that you can easily point out, but now you get to mix it all in. You get to say, look, You get to excuse every little thing that this crappy Chipman is doing as far as confiscating guns and the things he said, because you're wrapping it in with him being not the right person, the ATF agent in front of the burned bodies, blah, blah, blah. So doing a disservice by taking in all the conspiracy instead of just the narrow ones, and good for Scott for the integrity. Him on the war on Yemen.
Really close to the show, but we did get one more super chat, and I want to bring this up because it's a very important issue to me. It's something I still don't think is talked about enough. The Wars of Moral said, ask Scott to talk about Yemen to maybe a new audience. We have to bring the worst things we're doing to an end. So just a few words about Yemen, what's going on there, why we need to make sure that it's talked about more than it is.
Well, we're 6 years and 3 months into the war, the latest phase of the war there. And it's the worst war in the world, Josh. It's the worst thing in the world right now. They call it the Saudi-led coalition. It's under the Obama theory from Libya. Remember, leading from behind. We let everybody else take the responsibility, but it's America's war. And the Yemenis aren't confused about that. They call it the American-Saudi war. USA is the world empire. Saudi Arabia is our client state. And America is backing them and has been backing them since March of 2015 in a war of deliberate genocide. And I got to tell you, the Americans have waged some brutal wars in the last 20 years. They've gotten a hell of a lot of innocent people killed.
I'm not going to let, by the way, watch it. I don't want to take away from everything. Scott Horton is a unique individual. His ability to retain and then regurgitate facts are pretty fascinating. Let's go to the last one here. Nick Ashley, episode 38. He was just recently on. He's kind of made a big deal in the Liberty movement lately. And he's part of the Tower Gang, a bunch of other stuff.
And discount. And anthemplanning.com, executive producers of the show. Wonderful people for all your emergency crisis needs. Definitely check them out. See what they can do for you today. So today we have an awesome guest. Like I said, he may not be Dave Smith, but he is definitely heavier than 40 pounds. He can definitely build a gazebo, I'm sure. He is the host of the Individualist podcast. He is also the host of one of my favorites, the Tower Gang Power Hour, hashtag Tower Gang. Shout out to those guys. He is the world's biggest troll. He is Nick Ashley. How you doing today, sir?
That is high praise, sir, calling me the world's biggest troll. I am very appreciative of you having me on. We've had some legendary guests on this show, and I'm really grateful to join that list, man. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of people that have been watching the show for a while know that we would have no audio on the show if it wasn't for Nick Ashley. There's just no way. The man, it probably was the first 10 shows. I had to call you before every show and be like, yo, I can't get any audio. I don't know what to do here.
I think it was a couple. I remember though the one big one was whenever Jacob Hornberger was on, which is one of the earlier ones for sure. But I don't think it was that many, but it was sure a couple.
I think with Hornberger, that was the one where I finally got it to where it was like I didn't have to have these like digital mic cables anymore and stuff. You're like, dude,
that's right.
Just make it a desktop audio. There you go. Duh. I was like, wow, okay. Cool. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for the shout out from Almighty Beach. We're already getting who is this 40-pound dweeb in the super chats. I love it. Thank you.
All right, let's move on.
An old man complaining about nothing. It's just like an old man being crotchety. That's your ammo against him. You're gonna write him off for that? Come on.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid, man. And you know, we also have people like Nick Sarwark posting memes of Ron Paul with quotes that aren't even attributed to him. I mean, these are the kind of people we're dealing with, you know what I mean? We kind of so I wanted to get into this a little bit with you because what I was taking flack for today is that I call people like that nerds and dorks. Like I just don't I don't deal with them. I'm not going to sit there and go back and forth with them over their dumbass opinions about who I am or what my movement is. It's like I'm a fucking libertarian and I've been fighting for liberty in this country, legitimately traveling around this country, doing all kinds of shit that they don't even ever talk about, ballot access petitioning in Ohio, fucking dumb shit, right? But it's like they're talking shit to me because I called somebody a nerd or a dork online that's been attacking my family for 4 years. Yeah. Do you agree that that's exactly the way those people should be handled?
Dude, the thing... Can I tell you, do you know what I've been doing to Nick Sarwark over the past couple of weeks or the past week or so?
Oh, yes, please talk about the memes. They're
all
my
right.
favorite.
So I was at Childerberg last weekend, over Memorial Day weekend, not last, but the one before. And I got home and I was laying in bed with both of my dogs. I took a picture with both of them, but one of them I was laying and it looked really funny. Like I was laying sideways and I had my dog with me and it hit me. You know that picture of Sarwark where he's sitting after he got his vaccination and he has like the Band-Aid on his arm?
Sorry,
it's just this black and white.
His Fauci ouchie. Yeah.
Oh God. So I just sent in the group chat, one of the group chats I'm in. I was like, bro, can somebody take this picture of me and this picture of Sarwark and make it look like I'm like cuddling him? And somebody immediately, like within 5 minutes, just drew it up and sent it back. And every time I see him every time some stupid Sarwark thing comes up on my timeline, I just respond with that. It ratios him every time. People love it and it's hilarious and it's got to be humiliating for him. Like today he did one where he made a quip about Peter Quinones, who's going through a divorce right now, and it's public that he's getting a divorce.
Shit, that was.
So he was like, people who are going through divorces shouldn't be assholes in public. And I just responded with the picture and tweeted, I know we're never getting divorced, sweetie. And what the fuck is he going to do against that? Here's the thing. If he says it's homophobic, I'll just say I'm gay. And if he says it's gay, I'll call him homophobic.
Right. Well, that was the funniest.
He can't win.
That was the funniest part about it, because when the first.
Okay, I could just actually sit here instead of doing a show right now. I could just sit here and listen to that all day, because that's solid stuff. Break the Cycle, Josh Smith, great show. I'm really enjoying it, and it's just conversations that he has with people. Who else has he had here? Clint been on, obviously. Eric Brakely, Pete Quinones, who we just spoke about. My condolences to your divorcer. Angela McCardle, Zuby's been on there. Hotep Jesus. I just said Dave Smith, Dan Smots. I don't know who he is. Though Bishop. Adam Kokesh, Mark Claire. Mark Claire is a good one. And speaking of Mark Claire, who's coming up next on the Libertarian Podcast Review? We're going to do some shows on, I've got something set up for qualified immunity, DVROs, domestic violence restraining orders, and gun rights, case that came down about the Supreme Court. And I thought we'd talk about that. I want to do Lions of Liberty Podcast Review, going over the Anarchist Handbook. Fuck you, Keith Knight, Pete Quinones, and Sal Agors for beating me to this situation and actually going over the book. I've got the exact same thing with two of my friends. We got the book and we're going to go chapter by chapter and talk about it. These are newbies to kind of the libertarian world. So am I, in a sense, but I'm a little bit further along than them. So I thought this would be fascinating to someone who's kind of coming along and reading these things, and then we'll have a conversation about it. Whereas Pete, Keith, and Sal are old hands at this stuff and experts. I thought it'd be interesting coming at it from a different point of view. And then another one, being an anarchist and an attorney. So maybe we'll talk to Liberty Weekly, Patrick McFarlane. Maybe I could have him come on here. We could talk about being attorneys or another attorney that's an anarchist. Who knows? One would be perfect to do. I had a little conversation with him back and forth on Twitter, and basically his answer, because someone was asking me, hey, what's it like to be an attorney and an anarchist? And I just basically said, look, it's not much going on in my point, and you might want to talk to this gentleman about it. And Kinsella, and he came back and said, yeah, it doesn't play a part of my life. Okay. Well, so, but he would probably be a fascinating one to talk to as well. I just feel like maybe he's way too smart for me to be going hand to hand with him on that. So maybe not. All right, everybody. Thank you once again. Check out the show. Pass it around. Give us a.
What I'm getting is,
did you vote for Joe
Right.
Jorgensen or Trump?
Who'd you vote for?
Who?
Thanks, everybody. Check out the show. Pass it around. This is about 14 episodes here. The Libertarian Podcast Review. Try to give us a review. Give us a little comment about it. Maybe we'll throw you in there. If you've been mentioned in the show and you're one of these big stars of one of the podcasts here, there, reach out to me and we'll get you on the show. We'll do a conversation. I need to do another one with Jose and maybe Clint and everybody else. I need to get back into it, and I've been taking a little bit of a break. So thanks for hanging with us on the Libertarian Podcast Review and what's coming up next. Some other ones he had in here, I wanted to say Josh. Josh has a unique life. He's got a bunch of kids now, and we'll talk about that maybe at some point. But I would encourage you to listen to his interview with Mark Claire, both of those things, because he really breaks down a lot of the personal stuff, so you get a little better idea of who Josh is. And when you want to check out the show, Break the Cycle, And once again, great podcast, good production. Would I suggest you put it in your rotation on your podcast? No, I would suggest you put him on your subscription list on YouTube, because that is where you're going to find him. And that's where you're going to be able to see Isabella Riley and the rest. Thank you, everybody.